February 22nd, 1995.
A primetime investigation.
Here's a bill right here.
Are inflated bills paying for your doctor's lavish lifestyle? We found physicians making up to $50,000 a month through secret deals with the people they sent to take care of you.
It's blood money. It's pure blood money.
Doctors who are cashing in while somebody else makes the house calls. Is it ethical to do that, doctor?
Terry McGovern, a beloved daughter, the vivacious sister that made her family laugh, and the mother of two. But what was the inner torment that led to a tragic, senseless death? Tonight, the compelling story as her father journeys inside his daughter's secret world to try to find answers.
It just seems so cruel to cut you in half.
This is the lifestyle of the rich, famous, and sometimes tax-exempt. Could you wave goodbye to Uncle Sam and live like a king?
How much money can someone save by giving up their citizenship?
While you're sweating over your taxes, Chris Wallace finds American millionaires who make their money and run.
One could kind of characterize them as economic Benedict Arnolds.
How much weight could you lose by skimming your milk? Tonight, some surprises about what you gain and lose when you make this choice.
From ABC News, with anchors Diane Sawyer in New York, Sam Donaldson in Washington, Chief Correspondent Chris Wallace, Judd Rose, Sylvia Chase, John Quinones, and Renee Poussaint. This is Prime Time.
Good evening. We've all heard the phrase, the doctor knows best. Often it's true. But tonight, we begin with a story of how some doctors made a lot of money by thinking what was best for them was not just for their patients. It's a story of doctors cashing in through secret deals with the country's biggest home health care company, Caremark. The patients they referred to Caremark got good care all right, but at a cost that was sky high, while the doctors who made the referrals were raking in a percentage off the top. Take a look at a story that gives new meaning to the phrase, the doctor knows best. This is the weekend home of Atlanta doctor Michael Rankin, located on 437 acres near Lexington, Kentucky. He paid $1 million cash for it. Dr. Richard Hudson moved from this modest house in Atlanta to this mansion in the city's plushest neighborhood. Purchase price, $1.9 million. According to sources, these and other Atlanta area doctors cashed in thanks to secret deals with the largest home health care company in the nation, Caremark. Deals dependent on patients like Alan Booth, who has AIDS.
It was a money game. It was a way for them to make a lot of money.
Nearly 3 years ago, Booth became very ill. His doctor, Michael Rankin, arranged for him to receive all his intravenous drugs at home through Caremark. Did he recommend a number of companies and say, now look, you can go with this one or this one or this one?
I was only offered one company. He brought a contract over to me and told me to read it, sign on the line, and that Caremark would take care of all billings.
For a long while, Booth never saw a bill. They went to his insurance company, Prudential, which paid them, until by mistake he started receiving copies. The totals shocked him. Caremark had billed his insurance company almost $50,000 in one 9-week period alone. At that rate, Booth was afraid his $1 million of lifetime coverage would soon run out.
I go in with fear every week, wondering if I'm going to be told at my doctor's office that I'm cut off and I can't come back.
Booth began shopping around and found he could get the same drugs and similar home care services elsewhere for much less, like at Midtown Medicine. Caremark charged $115 for a dose of vancomycin. Midtown charged only $65. Caremark charged $265 for 100 AZT pills. Midtown charged $148. Caremark charged over $4,000 for a 1-week supply of an intravenous nutritional supplement. Midtown's charge would have been just over $1,500. Alan Booth wondered why Dr. Rankin would refer him to a company with such high prices. He told us this woman, Ellen Sweet, who was Dr. Rankin's office manager, finally told him a secret. If Rankin referred a patient to Caremark, he would get 25% of all the money Caremark collected from the patient's insurance company.
At first, I was upset and confused. That turned into anger and rage. You know, here I am, somebody very sick. You know, who do I talk to about this?
Did you go to Dr. Rankin and say, is this true?
I did. I confronted Dr. Rankin and I confronted Caremark, and both of them denied having any kind of business deals.
Booth filed a lawsuit, but shortly after speaking to us, he settled it. Caremark agreed to pay his attorney's fees and give him free home health care for life. In return, Booth signed a statement saying he'd received superior care and he had no personal knowledge of any kickbacks to doctors, a statement calling it all a misunderstanding. But Primetime's investigation has uncovered a lot of independent evidence pointing to the truth of what Alan Booth had told us. We tracked down 5 former Caremark employees, 2 of whom agreed to go on camera with identities concealed, who described for us an elaborate scheme involving doctors.
I call it buying a doctor.
Here's the way they say it worked. A doctor referred a patient to Caremark for home health care. Caremark billed the insurance company, but in the name of a third company, set up by the doctor, who siphoned off a percentage of the insurance money, sometimes as much as 30%. And what did the doctors do for this?
Refer the patient.
I mean, the doctor didn't perform any services for it?
In addition to services that he would have performed on his patient normally?
Yeah.
No.
And of course, the doctor's financial interest was concealed. Take a look at one of Booth's bills. Even though Caremark has provided all the goods and services, Booth's insurance company, Prudential, is being billed by a company called Family Medical Services at a Chicago post office box. Family Medical Services was nothing more than a front set up for the benefit of 2 doctors, one of whom was Michael Rankin, Booth's doctor. These arrangements were so irregular that some of Caremark's own staff thought it fishy, like this former employee.
What my manager once told me when I questioned it was they have to pay the doctor something.
Or the doctor wouldn't refer patients to Caremark?
Or they would go somewhere else.
For the doctors, it was a gold mine. How much money did this add up to?
Some doctors received as much as $50,000 a month.
A month?
Yes.
She says Dr. Rankin made the most of all.
But there were 2 or 3 months in which he exceeded over $100,000.
Where was this kind of money coming from? We asked Don Kreist, who owns Midtown Medicine, to go over some of the bills with us. Take the backpack that Booth and others use to carry around their intravenous drug. How much do you charge a patient for the backpack?
There is no charge for the backpack. But when I got to buy a new backpack, if this one gets soiled, it costs me $30.
Caremark charged Booth $320. Caremark also billed for drug compounding, that is, mixing a drug with water, as Kreist is doing here, a procedure which takes about a minute a dose. How much do you charge for it?
There is no charge for compounding.
What if you do 100 of them?
There's still no charge for compounding.
Caremark charged Booth over $1,000 for compounding 14 doses. That's $1,000 for about 14 minutes' work. But there's more.
Here's a bill right here.
Caremark not only charged exorbitant prices for its own services, it marked up the drug bills its patients incurred on their own, as Kevin Roush belatedly discovered.
We all went through this horrible time together. He needed help.
Roush is talking about Harry Grasmick, who died of AIDS 2.5 years ago. When Grasmick got too weak to pick up drugs himself, his family hired Roush to do it for him at Hal Mill Pharmacy in Atlanta.
We wanted him to live in dignity. We wanted him to die in dignity.
Who was Harry's doctor?
Dr. Cole Wolford.
But when Roush looked over the insurance bills and compared them to Hal Mill's stated prices, he was amazed. Hal Mill's charge for 120 Dilantin tablets was $24.80, but the bill to the insurance company was for $40.80. Hal Mill's charge for 100 Viaxin pills was $260, but the insurance company was being billed for $433. According to sources, Dr. Wolford sent Grasmick to Hal Mill Pharmacy, which was submitting the bills to Caremark, which was jacking them up to the insurance company, but not using its own name. No, the insurance company was being billed by something called Home Therapy Alternative, which, surprise, used a Chicago post office address. We did some checking, however, and the federal tax ID number listed on Grassmick's bills referred us back to Georgia. We found the company registered with the Secretary of State's office in Atlanta. And guess who turns out to be behind it?
Do you know who owns Home Therapy Alternative?
No, I have no idea who owns Home Therapy Alternative.
But we checked. The man who is the chief executive officer is Dr. Cole Wolford.
Well, I am amazed. I am shocked. I don't know what to say. I didn't expect him to be involved in it, not like that.
What do you make of this, Mr. Roush?
It's blood money. It's pure blood money.
Kickbacks are unethical, clearly.
We showed some of our tapes and materials to Dr. Lonnie Bristow, president-elect of the American Medical Association. He says doctors should only be paid for services rendered.
Anytime a physician receives a reward for simply sending a patient to an entity that's providing some sort of service, that's a kickback arrangement. And if these statements are proven to be true, then that would be a kickback arrangement, and that's clearly unethical and would be deplored by the profession.
In my review of the Georgia law, this would not be illegal per se. In a neighboring state like Florida, it would be.
William Dombey heads the legal center of the National Association for Home Care. No matter what state law provides, he says his organization considers kickbacks unethical and that prices charged by some in the industry are outrageous.
We've supported legislation which would ban this kind of conduct.
Why do insurance companies pay these large bills?
I think one reason why was insurance companies really just looked at the charges as a charge compared to hospital care. If the charge for hospital care was greater than the charge for the home care services, they felt they were getting a good deal.
Certainly also a good deal for Caremark and the doctors, but it raises questions for the patients that go beyond money.
If you look at the cost of some of these drugs, $500, $600 a bottle they'd charge, it makes me wonder how much of that was really necessary and how much of it was just a way for the doctor to get more kickback.
To get rich.
Exactly.
Dr. Rankin?
We wanted to get the doctor's side of all this. We caught up with Dr. Michael Rankin on his way to his Kentucky weekend home.
Doctor, is it ethical to get money from Caremark for patients that you have sent them? Can't you talk to me about it?
I just wish y'all a good day.
Dr. Rankin, we'd like to sit down with you and do a formal interview.
He declined, but his attorney sent us this letter saying Dr. Rankin never did anything illegal and never compromised the quality of care he delivered to his patients based on business as opposed to medical considerations. Harry Grassmick's doctor, Cole Wolford, also declined to sit down with us. His only off-the-cuff comment was the same as Dr. Rankin's.
Is it ethical to do that, doctor?
Have a nice day.
Dr. Richard Hudson, who lives in that Atlanta mansion, didn't return our phone calls. For its part, Caremark, in a letter, acknowledged having percentage deals with some doctors, but said the arrangements complied with federal and state laws and were structured to better serve the patients. The company writes, it was never Caremark's policy to pay physicians for referrals. And actually, it was the doctors who hired Caremark and paid it a percentage to provide home care and do the billing. According to Caremark, the doctors kept the rest to handle things like home health coordination and home care planning assessment. As to the high prices, Caremark insists the prices charged were competitive with comparable services. Primetime has learned Caremark's deals with doctors extended well beyond Atlanta. Hundreds of doctors all around the country, including cancer specialists, internists, and obstetricians, had financial arrangements of various kinds with Caremark. Deals that are now the subject of a widespread federal investigation. Caremark is already under indictment in Minnesota for allegedly paying $1.1 million in kickbacks to a doctor for referring Medicaid patients to Caremark. The trial is scheduled to begin in July. Caremark says it expects to be vindicated.
Still to come, a sunny climate, an exclusive community, and an extra added attraction.
You can save 55% death taxes, you can save 55% gift taxes, you can save 40% income taxes.
But first, a father's poignant look at the daughter he thought he could save. When Primetime continues. Time continues. Now from New York, Diane Sawyer.
It was a bitterly cold day last December 13th in Madison, Wisconsin, when the frozen body of a young woman was found in a snow-covered alley. She was identified as the daughter of former Senator and presidential candidate George McGovern, a 45-year-old mother of two named Terry. But what was the path that brought her there? Why could she never turn away from the despair she first met as a teenager? Tonight, Renee Poussaint follows a father's search for the little girl he lost.
From the very beginning, Terry had my heart 100%. She had one of those remarkably sunny dispositions.
She was George McGovern's middle child, the lively center of family gatherings, a caring sister, daughter, friend, and young mother, except those times, as her father puts it, when the demon took control.
And I'd say, well, Terry, who's ahead today, you or the demon? She'd say, well, I thought I was until about noon. I'm not so sure now.
One day, last December, the demon finally took her away from them for good.
It should have.
The loss devastated the McGovern family, George, his wife Eleanor, their 4 remaining children, and their grandchildren, Marion and Colleen, Terry's daughters. For McGovern, a parent's tormented need for an answer, how this could have happened to his perfect little girl, this smiling child who could always make him laugh, but who, by her mid-teens, already had symptoms of the disease that would kill her.
I think that the first time she took a drink, she experienced a kind of a sense of relaxation. She told me once that it was easy to be funny after a drink or two.
Did you forbid her to drink?
I figured that's the one thing probably would challenge her to drink more. It's just something maybe I would have been more on top of if I had been there more.
He searches for clues to what was missing in Terry's life, and her own words tell him, at some critical times, it was him.
It's very tough to read it in some of her letters even yet, which I've done the last few weeks. I didn't embrace her enough and tell her that I loved her and things like that. She always told me that, and I think that probably my responses weren't as warm as they should have been.
Why didn't you?
Well, I think it was being too involved in my career, too ambitious. I'm not trying to defend my behavior. I'm telling you, I regret it.
The senator from South Dakota was busy building his political career. In 1972, he ran for president against Richard Nixon. His passionate issue, stopping the war in Vietnam. It was a hard-fought, ultimately losing campaign, with his daughter Terry his ardent supporter.
She'd go into Alabama and Mississippi and Georgia and places like that and just knock audiences over just talking about her father.
But she was hiding a growing addiction.
She was belting down quite a bit of vodka every day, maybe as much as a pint or more a day, all during that campaign.
During her 20s, her parents tried every treatment and therapy money could buy.
I used to get mad at her when she'd go to these treatment programs and then flop, and I couldn't help show my disapproval and my disappointment.
For short periods, she seemed to get control, managing to finish college, even working sporadically in social service jobs. In 1976, she moved to Madison, Wisconsin to live with a sister, got a job at this child care center. She met and fell in love with a social worker, Ray Fry. They had 2 baby girls, Colleen and Marion, and for almost 8 full years, Terry McGovern was sober.
Are we going to get you to ever see these, Fred?
Then one day, inexplicably, the cycle began again.
Sometimes she'd be sober for several months, sometimes several weeks, sometimes several days. Finally, it got down to the point where she could drink on the way home from release from the treatment program.